The next minister we want to talk about is Jim Wilson, who's the new Minister of Economic Development, Job Creation, and Trade. So certainly no stranger, like Ernie Hardeman, elected in 1995 as part of the Mike Harris government. Wilson has been re-elected ever since from the riding of Simcoe Grey. Again, we talked in some of our other cabinet coverage of a name change, whereas under Kathleen Wynne, this was the Ministry of Economic Development and Growth.
And there was a separate Ministry of International Trade.
That's right. So we now have Jim Wilson doing a job that two ministers used to do. Although in fairness, I'm old enough to remember when it was the Ministry of Economic Development and Trade. So it got split up, now it's put back together.
Just so you don't feel so old, I remember it as well.
Okay.
I'm old enough as well to remember.
Okay, I don't feel so bad then. So it's an interesting position. Wilson's certainly no stranger to the legislature. He was a cabinet minister under Harris. He's been House Leader. He's pretty well done most things that you can do there.
And again, another very well liked, very well respected member of the PC caucus, both within the caucus but also by others outside the caucus, and a very effective politician. So not a surprise then that he would get what is, again, may not have been charged with any of the prominent priorities set out by the Ford administration in terms of their platform, but certainly has a very significant portfolio since we're making Ontario open for business and trying to make sure that there is significant job creation, significant job growth, and prosperity for those in Ontario. This is going to be obviously another key portfolio to advance that. So, giving it to a pair of sure hands there.
Well, I agree with you, and I think now the timing again is such that as NAFTA is happening. So as we're talking to you, Mexico's elected a new president. The President of the United States doesn't look like he's going to let up on things anytime soon. The new Premier of Ontario has publicly stated that he will work strongly with the federal government to protect Ontario jobs as NAFTA is either renegotiated or whatever they end up doing with it. And now Wilson is asked to be the Minister of Economic Development, so I suspect he's going to spend the first part of his time reaching out and talking to business leaders to get a better sense of how all of this would potentially impact them.
Mm-hmm. Well, and certainly job creation, that's a new part of the name for the ministry that was put in place there, which again is in that signaling area of trying to say, here's what we're putting a premium on. And so getting more jobs, creating more jobs is a key driver, key priority for the government, and particularly having that job growth occur not just within Toronto and Ottawa. We've certainly seen on the economic statistics that certainly there have been very significant growth numbers economically in both Toronto and Ottawa, but the rest of the province has faced maybe not stagnation, but not the same levels of growth by any means. And so certainly it's important to make sure that we see some of that growth take place in other parts of the province.
I agree, and I think a positive is that Jim Wilson will be very familiar with the auto industry since the Honda Alliston production facilities reside in his riding. So he comes to this job not being a stranger to that.
Absolutely.
And as I say, having been in the legislature for 23 years, there's not too many things that people like Wilson haven't seen or heard before. So good choice. I think he'll do well. And one concern is that there was some talk during the campaign about eliminating or minimizing some of the programs that the Ontario government has had to recruit and or retain companies and jobs here. I think Wilson, if he doesn't already know, will quickly find out that the Ontario government has to have some tools when they're competing with some of the southern states, the U.S. states, with Quebec. I mean, there's a lot of government participation in trying to get companies to either come or to stay. And I think one of the things we found under the Harris government is when they did away with a lot of that, the ministers just didn't have the tools they needed to go out there, right, into the world and say, hey, why don't you come and locate your new factory in Ontario? Like, hey, okay, what have you got? You got to have something to put on the table, because as we've seen, places like South Carolina, and they are pretty aggressive at enticing companies. So hopefully the Ford government will see the benefit of maintaining all of those programs. They've already said they'll maintain some, but I think if we want to compete with other jurisdictions that are very aggressive, Jim Wilson's going to need to have some tools in his toolkit. All right, good luck, Minister Wilson. We'll see you soon.